I didn't recognize her at first. The woman standing on my porch was soaked through, rain clinging to her hair like forgotten promises. For a moment, all I saw was a stranger, trembling hands, red-rimmed eyes, a coat that had seen better days. But then she lifted her face, and I saw her. My daughter-in-law. The same woman who once told my son I was toxic. The same woman who made him stop calling me. For 3 years, I hadn't heard my son's voice, not even on birthdays, not even when I was in the hospital. Silence had become my companion. So when she whispered my name that night, it didn't sound real. "Mother," she said, barely audible over the rain. I froze. She hadn't called me that since the wedding, the day she smiled for the photographs, but looked right through me. Behind her, the wind howled, carrying the scent of wet soil and something else, fear. I wanted to close the door. I wanted to ask her why she was here after everything she'd done. But instead, I stepped aside. Maybe it was instinct. Maybe it was love, stubborn, bruised, but still alive somewhere deep inside me. "Come in before you catch your death," I murmured. She hesitated, her eyes flickering toward the empty street, and then stepped in. Her shoes left small muddy prints across my clean floor. I should have been angry. I wasn't. I was just tired. The kettle was still warm from my evening tea. I poured her a cup without asking, just as I used to when she first joined our family. Back when she'd call me Ma, and we'd talk about recipes and fabrics and how my son never folded his shirts right. But that was before everything changed. Now she sat at my kitchen table, the same table where I'd once taught her to roll dough for parathas, and she couldn't even meet my eyes. "What happened?" I finally asked. My voice came out softer than I expected. She looked up, tears spilling over. "He left me." My heart stopped. For years, she'd had him. For years, I had believed I'd lost my son to her. Pride, her control, her need to keep him away from me. And now, she had lost him too. The clock ticked on the wall. The rain outside softened. And somewhere between the silence and the sound of her crying, I realized this was not the same girl who once turned my son against me. This was someone broken, and I had a choice to make. Normal life/setup. Before everything fell apart, my days followed a quiet rhythm. I'd wake before sunrise, light a candle in front of the small shrine near my window, and whisper a prayer, mostly for my son. For his health. For his happiness. For his heart to remember me. Then I'd make tea, open the curtains, and look out at the mango tree in my backyard. Its leaves were starting to yellow that year, a sign of neglect, I thought. I couldn't blame it. Everything in that house had felt neglected since he left. His name is Ravi. My only child. He used to call every evening after work. We'd talk about his day, about small things, the kind of everyday details that only mothers care about. Then he met her. Priya. I remember the first time he brought her home, how she smiled too wide, how she called me auntie instead of ma. Still, I tried. I made her favorite food, complimented her sorry, and asked about her family. She was polite, distant, but polite. After the wedding, the calls became shorter. Then fewer. Then none at all. I'd dial his number sometimes, only to hear her voice on the other end, saying, "He's busy, ma. I'll tell him you called." But I knew she wouldn't. One afternoon, I received a message not from him, but from her. A long, cold text asking me not to interfere in their marriage. She said my advice made Ravi feel pressured, that I was manipulative. That was the last time I reached out. The years that followed blurred together. I filled them with small things, teaching neighborhood children to read, growing herbs in my kitchen, pretending I didn't flinch when someone mentioned their children visiting. But no matter how busy I kept myself, there were nights when I'd catch myself setting out 2 cups of tea and remembering too late that only one would be needed. The night Priya showed up was unusually cold for late August. I had just turned off the lights when the knocking started, urgent, uneven. Now, sitting across from her, I could see she had changed. Her makeup had faded into smudges. Her nails, once perfectly manicured, were bitten down. "Ravi left you?" I asked, trying to steady my voice. She nodded. He said he needed space. He took his things and she stopped, choking on her words. He's been gone for 2 months. I didn't know where else to go. I wanted to ask why she hadn't gone to her parents. But I already knew the answer: pride. The same pride that once kept her from inviting me to their house, from answering my calls, from acknowledging me at family gatherings. Pride breaks faster than love. I stood up, walked to the stove, and stirred the tea that had gone cold. The aroma of cardamom filled the air. For a moment, it almost felt like old times, before the silence, before the bitterness. She sipped quietly, her hands trembling around the cup. "I didn't think you'd let me in," she whispered. "I almost didn't," I said honestly. Her eyes lifted, uncertain, searching. "Do you hate me?" I thought about that. About the years of loneliness, the unanswered calls, the holidays spent in silence. Then I shook my head. "No, I don't hate you. But I did stop waiting for you to change." She swallowed hard, and for a long time, neither of us spoke. Outside, the rain stopped. Inside, the quiet felt different, not empty this time, but expectant, like the pause before something begins again. And I realized that maybe this wasn't the end of our story. Maybe it was the start of a painful kind of healing. I didn't recognize her at first. The woman standing on my porch was soaked through, rain clinging to her hair like forgotten promises. For a moment, all I saw was a stranger, trembling hands, red-rimmed eyes, a coat that had seen better days. But then she lifted her face, and I saw her. My daughter-in-law. The same woman who once told my son I was toxic. The same woman who made him stop calling me. For 3 years, I hadn't heard my son's voice, not even on birthdays, not even when I was in the hospital. Silence had become my companion. So when she whispered my name that night, it didn't sound real. "Mother," she said, barely audible over the rain. I froze. She hadn't called me that since the wedding, the day she smiled for the photographs, but looked right through me. Behind her, the wind howled, carrying the scent of wet soil and something else: fear. I wanted to close the door. I wanted to ask her why she was here after everything she'd done. But instead, I stepped aside. Maybe it was instinct. Maybe it was love, stubborn, bruised, but still alive somewhere deep inside me. "Come in before you catch your death," I murmured. She hesitated, her eyes flickering toward the empty street, and then stepped in. Her shoes left small muddy prints across my clean floor. I should have been angry. I wasn't. I was just tired. The kettle was still warm from my evening tea. I poured her a cup without asking, just as I used to when she first joined our family. Back when she'd call me Ma, and we'd talk about recipes and fabrics and how my son never folded his shirts right. But that was before everything changed. Now she sat at my kitchen table, the same table where I'd once taught her to roll dough for parathas, and she couldn't even meet my eyes. "What happened?" I finally asked. My voice came out softer than I expected. She looked up, tears spilling over. "He left me." My heart stopped. For years, she'd had him. For years, I had believed I'd lost my son to her pride, her control, her need to keep him away from me. And now, she had lost him too. The clock ticked on the wall. The rain outside softened. And somewhere between the silence and the sound of her crying, I realized this was not the same girl who once turned my son against me. This was someone broken, and I had a choice to make. Normal life/setup. Before everything fell apart, my days followed a quiet rhythm. I'd wake before sunrise, light a candle in front of the small shrine near my window, and whisper a prayer, mostly for my son. For his health. For his happiness. For his heart to remember me. Then I'd make tea, open the curtains, and look out at the mango tree in my backyard. Its leaves were starting to yellow that year, a sign of neglect, I thought. I couldn't blame it. Everything in that house had felt neglected since he left. His name is Ravi, my only child. He used to call every evening after work. We'd talk about his day, about small things, the kind of everyday details that only mothers care about. Then he met her, Priya. I remember the first time he brought her home, how she smiled too wide, how she called me auntie instead of ma. Still, I tried. I made her favorite food, complimented her sorry, and asked about her family. She was polite, distant, but polite. After the wedding, the calls became shorter. Then fewer. Then none at all. I'd dial his number sometimes, only to hear her voice on the other end, saying, "He's busy, Ma. I'll tell him you called." But I knew she wouldn't. One afternoon, I received a message not from him, but from her. A long, cold text asking me not to interfere in their marriage. She said my advice made Ravi feel pressured. That I was manipulative. That was the last time I reached out. The years that followed blurred together. I filled them with small things, teaching neighborhood children to read, growing herbs in my kitchen, pretending I didn't flinch when someone mentioned their children visiting. But no matter how busy I kept myself, there were nights when I'd catch myself setting out 2 cups of tea and remembering too late that only one would be needed. The night Priya showed up was unusually cold for late August. I had just turned off the lights when the knocking started, urgent, uneven. Now, sitting across from her, I could see she had changed. Her makeup had faded into smudges. Her nails, once perfectly manicured, were bitten down. "Ravi left you?" I asked, trying to steady my voice. She nodded. He said he needed space. He took his things and she stopped, choking on her words. He's been gone for 2 months. I didn't know where else to go. I wanted to ask why she hadn't gone to her parents. But I already knew the answer: pride. The same pride that once kept her from inviting me to their house, from answering my calls, from acknowledging me at family gatherings. Pride breaks faster than love. I stood up, walked to the stove, and stirred the tea that had gone cold. The aroma of cardamom filled the air. For a moment, it almost felt like old times, before the silence, before the bitterness. She sipped quietly, her hands trembling around the cup. "I didn't think you'd let me in," she whispered. "I almost didn't," I said honestly. Her eyes lifted, uncertain, searching. "Do you hate me?" I thought about that. About the years of loneliness, the unanswered calls, the holidays spent in silence. Then I shook my head. "No, I don't hate you. But I did stop waiting for you to change." She swallowed hard, and for a long time, neither of us spoke. Outside, the rain stopped. Inside, the quiet felt different, not empty this time, but expectant, like the pause before something begins again. And I realized that maybe this wasn't the end of our story. Maybe it was the start of a painful kind of healing. The next morning, the sun crept in shyly, painting my kitchen walls with streaks of gold. Priya had fallen asleep on the sofa, her face half buried in a cushion. She looked smaller, somehow fragile, like a child after a storm. I stood there for a while, watching her breathe. It was strange how time could fold in on itself. Once, I'd imagined her sitting here beside Ravi, laughing over my cooking. Then, I'd imagined her gone for good. And now, here she was again, sleeping under my roof, as if the years between us were just a bad dream. The tea kettle whistled softly, breaking my thoughts. I made 2 cups of tea. Old habits, it seemed, died harder than resentment. When she woke, she looked disoriented, as though she'd forgotten where she was. "Good morning," I said gently, setting her tea down. She blinked, rubbed her eyes, and managed a small smile. "You still make it the same way." "Some things don't change," I replied. She hesitated, then looked around the living room. The framed photos, the tidy shelves, the vase with dried flowers that Ravi had once brought me from his college trip. Her gaze lingered on his picture. "He looks so young there," she said softly. "He was," I murmured. "And happy." Her eyes glistened. She didn't say anything more, and I didn't push her. Silence, I'd learned, sometimes spoke more truth than words. After breakfast, she insisted on helping me fold laundry. It was awkward at first, 2 people trying to remember how to share a space after years of pretending the other didn't exist. But slowly, something loosened. She folded one of Ravi's old shirts, the one I still couldn't bring myself to donate. "He always loved this color," she said, her voice catching slightly. I looked up. "He did," said it made him look confident. A small laugh escaped her lips, a sound so rare in that house, it startled me. But it vanished quickly. "Do you know where he went?" I asked finally. She shook her head. "I've tried calling him. He doesn't pick up. I even went to his office. They said he took a leave." She swallowed hard. "He told me he couldn't breathe around me anymore. That everything had become too heavy." Her words hung in the air like smoke. There was a time when I might have said, "Now you know how I felt when you shut me out." But seeing her like this, all that arrogance stripped away, I couldn't find satisfaction in her pain. Instead, I said quietly, "Maybe he just needs time." She nodded, tears spilling over. "I don't know what I did wrong. I gave him everything. I tried so hard to be perfect." I wanted to tell her that perfection was never love, that real love was messy and forgiving and human. But she wasn't ready to hear that yet. So I said the only thing I could, "Eat something, Beta. You'll think better on a full stomach." Later that day, I stepped out to buy vegetables from the market. The sky was still gray, the streets muddy from the night's rain. The vendor, an old friend, called out, "Long time no see, Amma." Ravi didn't come this time. I forced a smile. "He's busy these days." She nodded, but her eyes softened with sympathy. Everyone in this small town knew. They always do. When I returned, Priya was sitting on the porch, staring at the mango tree. Its branches had begun to shed the yellowed leaves. She looked up when she heard my footsteps. "I used to think you hated me," she said quietly. "I didn't," I said, placing the bags down. "But I did stop trying." "Why?" "Because trying alone doesn't work." She looked down at her hands, fidgeting with the edge of her dupatta. "I didn't know how to be a daughter-in-law. My mother told me to make my own space, not to depend on anyone. I thought, if Ravi saw me as independent, he'd love me more." I sighed. "Love isn't something you earn by outshining others. It's something you build by sharing." She stared at me, eyes wide and glistening. And for the first time, I saw the young woman she must have been before pride hardened her edges. That evening, she helped me cook dinner. She chopped vegetables awkwardly, slower than before, and I teased her gently. "You've forgotten everything I taught you." She smiled faintly. "Maybe I need another lesson." We cooked in quiet harmony, the smell of cumin and garlic filling the air, and for a fleeting moment, I felt something unfamiliar between us, not forgiveness yet, but the faint outline of it. Over dinner, she finally asked, "Do you think Ravi will ever talk to me again?" I looked at her carefully. "That depends. Not on what you say, but on whether you've learned to listen." She stared at her plate for a long time. "I didn't listen before, did I?" "No," I said softly. "But neither did I." Her head snapped up, surprised. I held on to my hurt, I admitted. I let it make me bitter. I told myself I was right, that you were the problem. But maybe we both were too proud to see that love can't survive a wall of silence. For a while, neither of us spoke. Then, slowly, she reached across the table, her hand trembling slightly, and placed it over mine. "I'm sorry, Ma," she whispered. It had been years since I'd heard her call me that. The word hit something deep inside me, something I thought had died long ago. I covered her hand with mine. "I know." Tears slipped down her cheeks, but she didn't hide them. And for the first time in years, I didn't feel alone in that house. That night, after she went to bed, I sat by the window and watched the streetlights shimmer through the fog. I thought about Ravi, where he might be, what he might be thinking. Maybe he was alone somewhere, sorting through his own regrets. Maybe he still remembered the way his mother's house smelled after a storm, cardamom, rain, and forgiveness waiting at the door. I whispered a quiet prayer for him. And for her. Because somehow I knew this was only the beginning. Healing wasn't easy. It demanded patience, pain, and humility. But for the first time, the silence didn't feel endless. It felt like space, the kind that allows something new to grow. A few days passed. The house felt less empty with Priya in it, not lively, not yet, but less hollow. The sound of footsteps in the hallway, the clatter of utensils, even her quiet sobs at night, all of it made the air heavier, but somehow more human. She had started helping me around the house. I didn't ask her to, but she did, sweeping the veranda, hanging clothes out to dry, refilling the spice jars that had sat half empty for months. She moved carefully, as if afraid she might break something invisible between us. I didn't speak of Ravi again. Neither did she. But his name hovered like dust in sunlight, always there, even if neither of us touched it. One morning, as I was trimming the dry leaves from the money plant, I noticed her standing by the gate, clutching her phone tightly. Her expression had changed, fear mixed with something else. "Is everything all right?" I asked. She looked startled, then forced a smile. Yes, just checking messages. But I saw the tremor in her hand. Later that day, I found her sitting on the bed, her phone screen dim, eyes red. The air felt heavy with something unsaid. Did you hear from him? I asked quietly. She hesitated, then nodded. He texted. Said he's fine. Her tone wasn't relief. It was something closer to shame. What did he say exactly? She looked down at her hands. He said, he's not coming back. That he needs time away from both of us. I felt the words like a knife turn slowly. Both of us. So he hadn't forgiven her or me. Maybe he's hurt, I offered. She shook her head. No, Ma. He's angry. He thinks I controlled him. That I kept him away from you. I stayed silent. Because once upon a time, that had been true. Her voice dropped to a whisper. And he's not wrong. That afternoon, while cleaning, she found an old photo album tucked behind the cabinet. She sat cross-legged on the floor, flipping through pages filled with smiles that belonged to another lifetime. Ravi in his school uniform, Ravi and me at the beach, Ravi's first birthday cake. She paused at one picture, our family photo taken a month before their wedding. She was sitting beside him, her hand lightly resting on his arm. My smile in that photo was stiff, unsure. I didn't realize how much space you gave us, she said softly. Back then, I thought you were distant. I was being careful, I replied. Didn't want to make you feel unwelcome. She laughed bitterly. And I took that as rejection. Her honesty startled me. For years, I had imagined her as unfeeling, all walls and sharp corners. But now, she was unraveling before me, thread by thread. Sometimes, I said, we hear only what we're afraid of. She nodded. I was afraid he'd love you more than me. The words lingered in the air like confession. And at that moment, I understood. It wasn't malice that had separated us, it was fear. Fear of losing love. Fear of not being enough. I reached over and touched her hand. He had enough love for both of us, Priya. It was us who couldn't share it. Her eyes shimmered with tears, and for the first time, I felt no bitterness in mine. Only sadness for all the wasted years. That evening, the phone rang. The old landline, the one that hardly ever rang anymore. I picked it up, heart pounding. Ma? I froze. That voice, deep, familiar, and distant. Ravi. Ravi? I whispered. There was a long silence. I could hear traffic in the background, faint rain, the echo of hesitation. I heard Priya's with you. Yes, I said carefully. She came a few nights ago. She didn't have anywhere else to go, he said flatly. No, I agreed. And neither did I. Another pause. Then a sigh. Is she okay? I looked toward the kitchen, where Priya was standing, frozen in place, tears welling. She's trying, I said softly. He didn't answer right away. When he spoke again, his voice trembled. I just needed space, Ma. Everything felt like a fight. She wanted to change me, you wanted to protect me. I felt caught between two worlds. My throat tightened. I never wanted to make you choose. I know, he said quietly. But she made it feel like I had to. I closed my eyes. And what now? He hesitated. I don't know. Maybe I'm the one who needs to change. Before I could say more, the line crackled and went dead. Ravi? I called, but it was too late. When I turned, Priya was standing there, pale, trembling. Was that him? I nodded. What did he say? I hesitated. He's thinking. He needs time. Her eyes filled again. Does he hate me? No, I said softly. If he hated you, he wouldn't still be thinking. She broke down then, sinking into the chair, covering her face with both hands. I wanted to comfort her, but I also knew that some tears had to fall alone. That night, I lay awake, staring at the ceiling. The rain had returned, tapping softly against the windows like old memories asking to come inside. I thought about what Ravi had said, being caught between two worlds. He wasn't wrong. I had spent years blaming Priya, but maybe I had been blind to my own role in the divide. Love, when guarded too tightly, can become suffocating. I remembered the first time Ravi brought her home, how I had inspected her every move, every word. How I had smiled, but measured her in silence. Maybe she had felt that judgment even when I didn't speak it aloud. And she, in her insecurity, had built walls to protect herself, walls that kept me out, but eventually trapped Ravi too. It was strange how much damage silence could do. Around midnight, I heard footsteps again. Soft ones. I turned to see Priya standing in the doorway, holding a pillow. "Can I sleep here tonight?" she asked quietly. I nodded. She lay down on the rug beside my bed, close enough to feel safe, but far enough to keep her dignity. After a long pause, she whispered, "He called you, didn't he?" "Yes." "Will he ever forgive me?" I took a deep breath. Forgiveness isn't something you wait for, Priya. It's something you start by forgiving yourself. She didn't answer, but I saw her shoulders shake as she cried silently into her pillow. I reached out, placed my hand lightly on her head, the way I used to when she was still new to our family, nervous and trying too hard. "Sleep, Beta," I whispered. "Morning will look different." She nodded through her tears. And as I lay there, the sound of her quiet sobs blending with the rain, I realized that maybe healing had already begun, not in grand apologies or promises, but in the small courage to stay under the same roof again. Morning came heavy and gray. The air still smelled of last night's rain, damp earth, rusted railings, and the faint scent of jasmine from the neighbor's yard. I woke early, careful not to wake Priya, who was still curled up on the rug beside my bed. Her face looked peaceful in sleep, as if the storm in her heart had quieted, if only for a few hours. I made tea quietly and sat by the window. The world outside felt new, washed clean, though nothing inside me had truly changed yet. When Priya finally stirred, she looked embarrassed. "I'm sorry," she whispered, brushing her hair back. "I didn't mean to stay." "It's fine," I said, handing her a cup. "It's been a long time since I wasn't alone in the mornings." Her eyes softened. "You really lived alone all these years?" I nodded. "Some company leaves you before they go." She looked away, guilt flickering across her face. "I never asked Ravi to stop seeing you, Ma." "Not directly. But you didn't stop him when he did," I said gently. She winced. "I thought that's what marriage meant, choosing sides. I thought that if I didn't, I'd lose him." I sighed, my fingers tracing the rim of the cup. When we love from fear, we always lose something, sometimes the person, sometimes ourselves. Her shoulders slumped, the truth of it sinking in. Later that day, she offered to help clean the storeroom. I hadn't touched it in years. It was where Ravi's old things were stored, college books, trophies, his guitar. Dust hung thick in the air as we opened the door, and sunlight sliced through the half-drawn curtains like a memory that refused to fade. Priya sneezed, laughing weakly. "He used to say you kept everything." "I did," I said, smiling faintly. "Every small thing that reminded me of him." She opened a box and found a small wooden frame, a photo of Ravi and me at the train station the day he left for university. My eyes were puffy from crying. His grin was full of dreams. "He used to talk about you all the time," she said. "He said you'd wake up at 4 to make his lunch and walk him to the bus stop." I chuckled softly. He hated breakfast, but I made him eat anyway. She looked at the picture for a long time, then said quietly, "I took that away from you, didn't I?" I didn't answer. The silence said enough. While sorting through papers, she suddenly froze. In her hands was a letter, yellowed at the edges, folded neatly, never opened. "What's this?" she asked, turning it over. My breath caught. The handwriting was familiar. Ravi's. He had written it years ago, before the wedding. I'd found it on his desk one afternoon and, for reasons I couldn't explain, never opened it. Maybe I was afraid of what it might say, afraid of seeing him slip further away. "Read it," I said quietly. She hesitated. "Are you sure?" I nodded. Her hands trembled as she unfolded it. The paper crackled softly. She began to read aloud. "Ma, I know you think I'm changing because of her, but I'm not. I'm just trying to be the man she needs and the son you can still be proud of. I love her, Ma, but that doesn't mean I love you less. Please don't make me choose. Please don't make her feel like she has to earn a place that's already hers. I want both of you in my life. Don't walk away from me if I take a step toward her. Love, Ravi." The words blurred before my eyes. My chest tightened, and before I knew it, tears slipped down my cheeks. Priya lowered the letter, her voice breaking. He wanted us to love each other. I nodded slowly, unable to speak. The letter was like a mirror, showing me not who he had been, but who he could have been if only pride hadn't stood guard at every door. Priya wiped her eyes. I never saw this side of him. He never talked about how much it hurt him. He didn't know how, I whispered. He thought silence would keep peace. She pressed the letter to her chest, her tears falling freely now. And I took that silence as distance. I thought he didn't care enough to defend me. It struck me then how easily love gets lost between people who all mean well, but listen poorly. That night, we sat together on the porch. The moon hung low, silvering the quiet street. The letter lay between us on the small table, like an old wound finally uncovered. Priya spoke first. I think I understand now why he left. It wasn't because he stopped loving me. It's because he didn't know how to breathe between us anymore. I nodded. Sometimes love suffocates when it's surrounded by too many expectations. She looked down, voice trembling. He said I made him feel like he had to prove his love every day. And when he didn't, I'd punish him with silence. I guess I learned that from watching my parents fight. My mother used silence like a weapon. Her words pierced me. Because I had done the same, punished Ravi with distance when I felt unwanted, hoping he'd come running back. We both made him live between silences, I said softly. He must have felt like shouting and finding no one who could hear. She exhaled shakily, nodding. We sat there for a long time, saying nothing, just breathing in the truth that hurt but also healed. When the clock struck 10, she turned to me. Do you think he'll ever come home? I looked at her, this woman who had once been my rival, now sitting beside me like a daughter I never had. Yes, I said. But not to the home we lost, to the one we're rebuilding. Later, after she went to bed, I took the letter again and read it in silence. The ink had faded, but his words still pulsed with warmth. Don't make me choose, he had written. And we did. I folded the letter gently and placed it near the small shrine by the window. Then, lighting a candle, I whispered a promise to the flame. I won't make him choose again. The flame flickered, dancing in the still air, and for the first time in years, I felt something inside me unclench, not joy, not peace, but forgiveness inching closer, like dawn after a long night. The next few mornings passed like quiet waves. There was rhythm again, 2 cups of tea instead of 1, footsteps echoing from room to room, and the low hum of someone humming while sweeping. I hadn't realized how starved this house had been for sound. Priya seemed lighter after the letter. She smiled more, spoke softer. She even began tending the garden, the one Ravi used to help me water when he was a boy. I'd watch her kneel among the marigolds, fingers pressed into the earth, whispering things only she and the plants could hear. One afternoon, I found her standing by the front door, staring at the letter we'd pinned on the corkboard beside Ravi's old photo. He wrote this hoping we'd read it together, she said quietly. Yes, I replied. And in a way, we finally did. She turned toward me, her voice trembling. Ma, I don't want him to come back to the same people who broke him. I looked at her, the sincerity in her eyes, the steadiness in her voice. Then we'll change before he does. Her brows furrowed. How? By facing what we've done. Not to him, to each other. She nodded slowly. Then let's start now. We spent the rest of the day in the kitchen, not cooking, but talking. For years, that kitchen had been the battlefield of unspoken wars. Now it has become a place of truth. She confessed things I never thought she'd admit, how she used to count the minutes Ravi spent on the phone with me, how she'd feel threatened when he mentioned my advice, how she'd secretly deleted my number once, thinking he'd forget to call me. I listened, each confession slicing through me like wind through paper, painful but cleansing. And when she stopped, I told her mine. How I had once told a relative that Priya wasn't raised right. How I'd avoided visiting them because I didn't want to see how easily she fit into a home I no longer felt welcome in. How I'd prayed, selfishly, for their arguments to remind him of me. Her eyes filled, but not with anger, with understanding. I guess we both loved him wrong, she whispered. Yes, I said softly. But love that survives mistakes can still learn to love right. We cooked afterward, something simple, dal, rice, and fried okra. But it felt different this time. She didn't hover nervously. I didn't correct her. Our movements synced unspoken, like we'd done this forever. Over dinner, she said, "Do you think Ravi's eating properly wherever he is?" I smiled faintly. "Probably not. He always hated cooking." She chuckled, then her expression grew. Thoughtful. "Maybe we should check on him. Just to know." I hesitated. "He asked for space." "I know," she said, "but sometimes space becomes distant if no one reaches across it." Her words stayed with me long after she went to bed. The next morning, I went to the temple. I hadn't gone in months. The air smelled of incense and ghee lamps. The sound of bells echoed softly through the courtyard. I lit a candle for Ravi and another for Priya. Not for what I wanted from them, but for the peace we'd all denied ourselves. As I stepped out, my phone buzzed. A message from an unknown number. My heart skipped. "Ma, it's me. I'm okay. I just need time. Please don't worry." I read the message twice, then once more. No questions, no promises, just assurance. But it was enough. I forwarded it to Priya. A minute later, my phone rang. Her voice was shaking. "He texted you?" "Yes." "What did he say?" "That he's fine." A long pause. Then, softly, "He didn't message me." "He will," I said. "But maybe not yet." Her silence was heavy, and I heard the small sound of her crying before the line went quiet. That evening, she came into the living room holding her phone. "Ma," she said, her voice trembling, "I want to tell him I'm sorry." "Then do it," I said. "I don't know what to say." "Tell him the truth." Simple words carry farther than perfect ones. She nodded and typed slowly. I didn't read her message, but I saw her fingers hesitate before she hit send. When she was done, she handed me the phone as if seeking permission. It said, "I hurt you." I tried to control what I couldn't understand. "I'm not asking you to come back, only to forgive me when you're ready." I read it silently, then gave it back. "That's a good start." She smiled weakly. "It feels strange, being honest." "It always does," I said. "Truth weighs more than silence." Days went by without reply. But something in Priya changed. She began sleeping better. She sang softly while washing dishes. Sometimes I caught her talking to the plants again, telling them stories about Ravi, about us. Then, one evening, while we were sitting outside watching the sunset stain the sky orange, her phone buzzed. She froze. I saw her lips tremble as she read. "It's him," she whispered. I waited. He said, "Thank you for saying that." I needed to hear it. Her eyes filled with tears, but her smile was the kind that came from deep relief. I reached over, squeezed her hand. "See? Sometimes love just waits for an open door." She nodded, wiping her cheeks. "Do you think he'll ever come home?" "One day," I said. "But not the way he left. We'll be different by then, and so will he." That night, after she went to bed, I sat by Ravi's photograph and looked at the two of them, his smile frozen in youth, hers still finding its way back to hope. I whispered, "Maybe this time, my son, when you come home, there will be room for all of us." Outside, the night breeze rustled the mango leaves, and for the first time in years, the sound felt like a blessing instead of a reminder. A week later, a courier arrived, a small parcel with no sender name. Priya looked at it, puzzled. Who would send us something? We opened it together. Inside was a small wooden box. And inside that box, a single photograph. It was the three of us. Taken years ago, before the wedding. Ravi's arm around both of us, all smiles. Tucked behind it was a note, in Ravi's handwriting, "Maybe it's time we try again." Priya gasped. My hand covered my mouth. I could barely breathe. It wasn't a promise, but it was an invitation. And somehow, that felt bigger. That evening, we cooked together again, the same meal he loved, dal, rice, and his favorite mango pickle. Not because he was home yet, but because we finally believed he might want to be. Priya set an extra plate on the table. "For him," she said, smiling softly. I didn't move it. I just let it sit there, a silent hope, glowing under the kitchen light. It was Sunday afternoon when Ravi returned. No message this time. No warning. Just the sudden sound of a motorbike stopping in front of the gate, a sound that hit my chest like a memory came alive. I was shelling peas on the veranda, half listening to the radio. When I looked up and saw him standing there, duffel bag slung across his shoulder, eyes shadowed from the sun, I forgot how to breathe. Priya came running from the kitchen. The bowl slipped from her hands, scattering lentils across the floor. Neither of us spoke for a long moment. He looked thinner, the kind of thin that doesn't come from hunger, but from carrying too much inside. His beard was unkempt, his clothes creased. But his eyes, those same brown eyes that once looked at me with laughter, were steady now. "Ravi," I said finally, my voice trembling. He gave a faint nod. "Ma." Then, looking at Priya, he added softly, "Priya." She took a step forward, stopped halfway, her face wet with tears already forming. "You came," she whispered. He sighed. "I wasn't sure I would." There was a long silence, heavy but not cruel. "Come inside," I said, my hands shaking. "Both of you." Inside, the house felt too small for the weight of 3 hearts trying to find space again. He looked around at the familiar walls, the photo on the table, the letters still pinned near the shelf. His gaze paused there. "You found it," he said quietly. "Yes," I replied. "Together." He nodded, something softening in his face. "I wrote that because I didn't want to lose either of you." "You almost did," Priya said. He turned to her, and for a second, neither looked away. There was no shouting, no bitterness, just exhaustion. "I'm sorry," she said first. "For everything. For trying to make you choose. For pushing you away from her." He looked down, rubbing his temple. "And I'm sorry I let you. I thought avoiding the fight would keep peace, but it just built walls higher." Her breath hitched. "I thought silence would make you love me more. I thought silence would protect you both," he murmured. They laughed then, a fragile, broken kind of laugh that comes only when there's nothing left to defend. I stood there, watching, feeling the air change around us. We sat down together at the table, the same table where so many unspoken words had once gathered dust. No one knew what to say next. Finally, I asked, "Have you eaten?" He shook his head. "Not since morning." "Then you will eat now," I said, slipping into an old habit. "No arguments." He smiled faintly, the first real smile I'd seen in years. "Still the same, Ma." "Always," I said. "Some things shouldn't change." I went into the kitchen, hands trembling as I served rice, dal, and mango pickle, his favorite. When I placed the plate before him, his voice caught. "You still remember?" "I never forgot," I said quietly. He looked down, his jaw tightening. "I don't deserve this." "Maybe not," I said, "but love isn't about deserving." We ate mostly in silence, but it wasn't uncomfortable. Every sound, the clink of a spoon, the rustle of fabric, felt like the heartbeat of something coming back to life. Halfway through, Priya reached across the table, her hand shaking, and placed it over his. He didn't pull away. "I thought you'd never forgive me," she whispered. He swallowed. "I didn't, at first. I was angry at you, at Ma, at myself. But after a while, anger stopped keeping me company. It just made me lonely." She began to cry quietly, and I looked away, giving them the space I never used to. Later, as the sun dipped low, the 3 of us sat outside under the mango tree. Its leaves rustled softly, golden light filtering through the branches. Ravi spoke first. "I stayed with a friend for a while. I tried to figure things out. But no matter where I went, I kept hearing both your voices in my head, arguing, scolding, reminding me to eat, to rest, to live right." Priya smiled through her tears. "We're impossible to escape." He laughed. Softly. "Apparently." Then, more seriously, he said, "I don't want to live like that again, caught between both of you. I need peace, not guilt." I nodded. "And you'll have it. This house isn't a battlefield anymore." Priya took a deep breath. "Neither is our marriage." He looked at her, his gaze steady. "Then let's start over. From the truth this time." She nodded, wiping her eyes. The neighbors must have noticed him that evening. Whispers floated across the street like they always do in small towns. People peeked through windows, murmuring, "He's back, and maybe things are fine again." But they didn't know what fine meant anymore. Not shiny perfection, but quiet repair. That night, as I cleared the dishes, I overheard them in the next room. Their voices low, soft, not fighting, not apologizing, just talking. "I'm scared," Priya said. "So am I," Ravi replied. "But maybe that's what growing up is, learning to be scared together." Her laughter, gentle, real, filled the room. And I stood there in the doorway, unseen, the warmth of it settling into my chest like sunlight after a long winter. Before bed, Ravi came to me. "Ma," he said, "I saw your message that day, the one you sent before I left." I didn't reply because I didn't know what to say. I frowned. "I never sent you a message." He looked confused. "Then who?" We both turned to Priya, who stood quietly behind him, eyes wide. "I sent it," she admitted. "From your phone. The night before you left. I thought if she saw you ignore her again, she'd stop calling." For a second, the air froze. My breath caught, the memory of that message coming back sharp and cold. "Stop calling me, Ma. Please. I need space." I had believed every word. Ravi's face went pale. "You? What?" She covered her mouth. I was angry. I didn't think. He turned away, jaw clenched. "You made her think I said that?" Tears streamed down her face. "I'm sorry. I thought you'd thank me later." "I thought no," he said quietly. His voice was shaking. "You thought you could control love." The room went silent again. I stepped forward. "Enough," I said softly. "That message broke me, yes. But it also taught me something. Love survives even when trust doesn't." Ravi looked at me, his anger softening into grief. "She's trying to fix it now," I continued. "Let her." He sighed, shoulders slumping. "I don't know if I can forget it." "You don't have to," I said. "Just don't let it keep you prisoner." He looked at Priya, her tears, her trembling hands, and after a long moment, he took a slow step toward her. "Next time," he said quietly, "if you're afraid of losing me, tell me. Don't punish me." She nodded, sobbing. "I will. I promise." And then, finally, he pulled her into his arms. From the doorway, I watched not as a mother guarding her son, but as a witness to something reborn. The wind rustled through the mango tree again, scattering old leaves across the yard. The storm had passed, but the scent of rain lingered, proof that, even after destruction, the earth remembers how to grow. The next morning felt different, lighter, though nothing outwardly had changed. The same house, the same walls, the same 3 cups of tea on the table, yet everything inside those small moments breathed again. Ravi sat by the window, sunlight spilling across his shoulders. Priya was kneading dough, quietly humming an old film song. I stood at the stove, stirring the tea, the scent of cardamom drifting through the air like forgiveness itself. It had been years since we'd shared a morning like this. When I handed Ravi his cup, he smiled. "It tastes the same," he said. "It always will," I replied. "Some recipes survive heartbreak." He looked down at his hands. "I used to think coming back here would feel like defeat." "And now?" I asked. He exhaled slowly. "Now it feels like coming home." Priya's eyes softened. "Maybe homes aren't places we find. Maybe they're the people we finally learn to forgive." No one spoke after that. We didn't need to. The silence between us had changed. It was no longer a wall, but a resting place. That afternoon, Ravi went out to the market. He insisted on going alone, said he wanted to buy groceries like old times. Priya and I watched him walk down the lane, his shoulders straighter, his steps unhurried. She turned to me. "Do you think people can really change, Ma?" I smiled faintly. "People don't change. They remember who they were before fear made them smaller." She nodded, her eyes distant. "I used to be kind once. Before marriage turned into competition." "You're still kind," I said. "You just hid it under armor." "We all do." She looked at me for a long time, then said quietly, "You're not what I thought you were." I chuckled. "Neither are you." We both laughed then, the kind of laughter that only comes when 2 hearts finally stop defending themselves. That evening, the neighbors came by. Word had spread, as it always does. They brought sweets, smiles, and questions disguised as concern. "So, Ravi is back," one of them asked. I nodded. "Yes, he's home." They exchanged glances, the kind that carry gossip like pollen. I didn't mind. Let them talk. For once, the story being told was one I could live with. When they left, Priya looked uneasy. I hate how they stare, as if they're waiting for us to break again. Let them wait, I said, pouring her water. People forget quickly. They always look for storms. They never stay to watch the rebuilding. She smiled at that. You sound like him when you say things like that. Then he must have learned something from me after all, I said, and she laughed through her tears. Over the next few days, we fell into a gentle rhythm. Ravi fixed the leaky tap in the bathroom. Priya cleaned the prayer shelf. I went back to my morning routine: tea, plants, a quiet prayer whispered for peace I no longer had to chase. Sometimes Ravi would sit beside me in the evenings and we'd talk not about the past, but about small things. The price of vegetables, a new film, the cricket match he'd missed. Those conversations were medicine, ordinary words healing extraordinary wounds. One night, after Priya had gone to bed, he said softly, "Ma, when I left, I thought distance would make things clearer. But it just made me see how much noise we carry inside ourselves." I looked at him. Noise. He nodded. The kind that tells you you're right and everyone else is wrong. It took silence to realize none of us were listening. He took my hand, rough and warm in his. "Thank you for still being here." I smiled, eyes wet. Where else would I go? A mother's love doesn't retire. It just waits for better weather. He laughed quietly, squeezing my hand. 2 weeks later, Priya suggested we visit her parents. I hesitated, old tension flickered inside me, but Ravi agreed, and I decided it was time. Their home was modest, quiet, filled with the faint smell of sandalwood and dust. Her mother greeted us politely, surprised but not unkind. Her father, older and frilier than I remembered, shook Ravi's hand and said, "It's good you didn't let pride win." Over tea, Priya's mother turned to me. "You must have hated her once," she said. "I hated what distance did to all of us," I replied. "Not her." The older woman nodded slowly. "Then maybe there's hope for the rest of us too." When we left, Priya hugged her mother tightly, a gesture that felt like 2 generations letting go of something heavy. Back home that evening, Ravi brought out his old guitar. Its strings were slightly rusted. It sounded a little uneven, but when he strummed the first notes, the house seemed to remember joy. He played softly, humming an old tune I hadn't heard in years. Priya sat beside him, her head resting on his shoulder. I sat nearby, eyes closed, letting the sound fill every corner silence had once claimed. When the song ended, I whispered, "It's been too long since music lived here." He smiled. "Then let's never let it leave again." A few nights later, rain returned, gentle this time, not angry. I stood by the window, watching drops trail down the glass like threads of memory. Behind me, I heard Priya's voice. "Ma," she said softly, "can I ask something?" "Of course." "Do you ever wish things had happened differently?" I thought about that, about the years of silence, the pain, the loneliness, about the night she stood on my porch, drenched and trembling. "No," I said finally. "If they hadn't, we wouldn't be who we are now. Pain taught us what peace really means." She nodded slowly, eyes glistening. "You're not just my mother-in-law anymore. You're my ma." The word sank deep. I reached out and pulled her into an embrace. For the first time, it didn't feel forced. It felt right, earned, not demanded. When Ravi joined us, he wrapped his arms around both of us. "My 2 favorite women are finally on the same side," he said playfully. I laughed. "We always were, son. We just forgot the fight wasn't between us." He kissed my forehead, then hers. No more forgetting. The 3 of us stood there, framed by the soft patter of rain and the scent of wet earth. And I thought, maybe love doesn't return the way it left. Maybe it limps, bruised and imperfect. But it does return if you leave the door open long enough. That night, before bed, I wrote in my small journal, the one I hadn't touched since Ravi's wedding, "Forgiveness doesn't erase the past. It rewrites the future." We lost years, but found meaning. We spoke in silence, but learned to listen. I closed the book and blew out the candle. In the darkness, I could still hear their quiet laughter drifting from the other room. And I smiled. Because for the first time in a long time, I didn't feel like a visitor in my own story. When I look back now, I don't see villains or heroes. I just see 3 people, all trying to love, all afraid of losing, all speaking different languages of the same heart. Ravi thought silence meant peace. Priya thought control meant security. And I thought sacrifice meant love. We were all wrong. Love isn't about who gives more, who wins the argument, or who says sorry first. It's about staying, even when staying hurts. It's about listening when words fail, and forgiving before someone earns it. That night, when she stood at my door crying, I thought the story was ending. But it wasn't the end. It was an invitation. An invitation to start over, to see each other without fear, to choose compassion over pride. I've learned that families don't break from shouting. They break from silence, the quiet kind that builds walls, not peace. We think time will heal what we refuse to touch, but it doesn't. Healing only begins when someone decides to knock on a closed door and someone else decides to open it. If you're listening to this and there's someone you haven't spoken to in a long time, someone who hurt you, or someone you hurt, maybe tonight, you can start with just one message. Not to fix everything. Not to pretend the past didn't happen. But simply to say, I'm still here if you are. Because sometimes, that's all it takes to bring love home again. When I make tea now, I still pour 3 cups. 1 for me, 1 for Priya, and 1 for Ravi, even when he's away. Not because I expect them to always be here, but because love, once poured, never really leaves the cup. It lingers in the warmth of forgiveness, in the echo of laughter after tears, in the small miracle of people finding their way back to each other. Tell me, if someone you loved knocked on your door after years of silence, would you let them in? If you felt something in this story, share it with someone who might need to hear it. And remember, sometimes, love just needs a second chance to find its voice.